Welcome to RSAC Conference 2025. We're here recording live from the Cyberist TV studio at the Marriott Marquis in San Francisco. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me for this interview is Asaf Kochan, co-founder and president at Sentra. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Congrats on being nominated as a Best Data Security Solution finalist in the 2025 SC Awards.
Thanks very much. You're honored.
So this is a particular category that you're in, the DSPM market, that was very interesting to me. When I was an industry analyst, I remember predicting data security would be one of the last things that the market would try to tackle because it can be so difficult to secure data. It's just a very fluid thing. It's like water in a lot of ways, where it just ends up in places where you don't want it to go. Right?
Correct. This is one of the most complex issues. It was extremely hard to do it in on-prem environments because the lack of compute, the complexity of creating the agents, which will basically scan, classify, tag data. But cloud computation really introduced this new opportunity, and it took a few years to evolve. And basically, the core foundational layer for data security is your ability to discover, which tends to be much more complicated than people assume. Discover, classify, and label or tag data. This is kind of foundational layer, no shortcuts. If you want to go into this space, it's a price you'll have to pay in order to kind of understand this foundational layer. And the applications you can mount on top of it once you do it correctly are immense.
Yeah, for sure. And it's and help me out a little bit with that in terms of, I imagine you cover cloud and on-prem.
Yeah. So we're Sentra's a cloud native platform. We were born in cloud, basically utilizing the cloud ecosystem in terms of storage, compute, automation, all the nice things you have in the cloud. So we kind of grew up from covering infrastructure, platform, and SaaS, reaching out and integrating into endpoint solutions. DLPs kind of becoming the brain of the DLP. After we tag the data, suddenly the DLP kind of becomes much more effective. And now we're moving from cloud to on-prem. So it's kind of the opposite journey of most other companies.
Yeah, very interesting. And I imagine, data being sensitive, one of the difficult things here is that the classification, the discovery has to happen almost entirely within the customer's enclaves, right? Like you can't pull that back into your own SaaS. You don't want all your customers' data paints a huge target on you. Like the bandwidth would be immense, right?
Yes. So first of all, surprisingly enough, some of the players outside do extract it to their environment.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they take it out. The SaaS, we are.
I would think that'd be a non-starter for some customers.
So yeah, we're surprised to see it, but as a security company, we think it makes no sense to extract data, not just in terms of creating extra risk, but also liability. So the first challenge is doing it in customers' premise without extracting the data. The second challenge is to get the classification granular and effective in petabyte scale environments. So you have to have your proprietary classification modules and abilities. Here, AI comes in because the unstructured data part requires large language models to provide context. So this is where you also deploy we developed our own LLMs using open source LLMs, and this provides substantial context on unstructured data. And then you have to make it economical because you can't boost your customers' cloud bill by just using compute. Running LLMs can be very expensive. So this challenge of doing it on-prem without hitting, inside the customer's environment, without hitting production, maintaining low cost, getting it accurate in terms of classification, and having a broad platform support. This is an immense challenge, and we're super proud of what we built here.
Yeah, so imagine maybe the LLM helps with like the initial classification, and then use some kind of cheaper CPU-based approach to do classification after that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct. That's correct. LLM also provide context. It's very contextual.
And yeah, so imagine. Well, so first of all, let me back up. And you mentioned discovery, you mentioned classification. What comes after that? After I've discovered and classified my data, I imagine some kind of policies, enforcement.
Yeah.
You can start building those kinds of things.
So once you have these two layers, you want to tag and label the data,
Yeah.
and basically then you tie it into various risk and compliance and privacy and governance frameworks. Some of them are existing ones, and the idea basically is to, on the security layer, is to detect misconfigured sensitive data. So we would
Right.
look at your entire data universe. We'll detect the most sensitive data, which is most exposed, and then we'll help you remediate it or configure it in the right way. And when I'm talking about it, this is not kind of next scientific kind of super complicated stuff. It's data which is duplicated, scrolls of data. This is a big issue in cloud environments, also in on-prem environments. So finding a backup which was left behind without no one knowing about it.
Yeah.
This is surprising enough. We find it.
Yeah.
So basically, looking at sprawls of data, duplications, data which should be encrypted but isn't, data which is open to the internet, data which is in terms of the access speed, we're tying between identity and access to data. So we see the sensitive data, we see who taps into it.
Right.
Suddenly you see third parties and people who shouldn't touch the sensitive data accessing it. So these kinds of issues are the issues which we're resolving, and the low-hanging fruits of the first few months of having this tool or platform are really kind of shrinking your attack surface by just eliminating risk.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I imagine in any organization that hasn't gone through this process before, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. Having been a penetration tester, a practitioner, PCI QSA, I can say 100% of the organizations I worked with, I found data where it was not supposed to be, and also where people were absolutely certain it wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right. You're not going to find anything there. Well, I just found a couple million credit card numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, and absolutely. And kind of prior to my Sentra phase in my previous life, I spent 31 years in one of the leading cyber agencies in the world,
Yeah.
Unit 8200. I commanded the unit, and we were the guys who were called in to deal with breaches. And most times investigating the breach, understanding who's behind it and where it began, had to do with a piece of data which was left behind.
Yeah.
Might have been lucrative data, might have been encryption keys, scripts, source code, whatever, but it was left behind without anyone knowing. The bad guys came in, identified it. Because no one knew about it, it wasn't protected. There were no retention policies around it. So this is why we decided to focus on that. As you said on your opening remarks, this is one of the most complicated areas to solve, but happily enough, I think we introduced a major kind of shift and advance in terms of being able to manage risk around data.
And it's something else I want to talk about here is it seems like we have two very, very different focuses on data converging at the same time. So on the one hand, we have data privacy. Most of the fines we see the FTC giving out today are companies storing too much customer data or not getting rid of customer data when they no longer need it. And of course, data privacy legislation all over the world popping up. And then on the other hand, we have AI, which needs as much data as it can get access to. Whether you're building a foundation model and training it, or just using it and using like a co-pilot kind of tool or a RAG, something like a Glean, to leverage all that data you have internally. So it's funny on when we think about data lifecycle, like there's some very difficult decisions I imagine for organizations to make. First, of course, they have to know what they have, right?
Yeah.
To make those decisions. But is this useful? Is this, so again, on the one hand, I hear people saying data is the new gold. And then other people saying, no, actually, data is the new uranium.
Yeah.
Yes, it's valuable like gold, but also dangerous.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Adrian, you're spot on. First of all, we're working with some of the largest enterprises in the US market and the global market. And for them, the basic stages of deploying Sentra and our capabilities are around basically understanding what they have. We want to understand what we have. We want to understand what we have that we don't know about. We want to kind of organize it as a fundamental layer. But as we go by, the AI part introduces a major challenge, because security teams and CISOs really have to sign on the ability to feed agents and train models with data.
Yeah.
Not necessarily extracting the data within the premise of the organization, like Copilot. So when they come to CISO, say, listen, I want to pour these data stores into training models or agents, please sign and say it's okay.
Yeah.
The CISO really can't sign it without understanding what's in it. And when he does sign it without understanding, suddenly he'll find medical records and credentials and board meetings and all
That's not
kinds of
supposed to be in
stuff.
there.
Yeah,
What's
and
that doing?
once it's in, it's impossible to push it out. So
Yeah.
really, for security teams, kind of enabling and pushing the business now becomes a major, major part. It's not only just risk reduction, it's
Yeah.
enabling the business to enjoy the prosperity of what AI provides. And in this sense, this tool and this capacity is crucial. So in this sense, it's the two parts of the sword, but the AI part is growing exponentially, and Sentra's big time in there. We just launched our
Yeah.
AI data security component, which really enables you to scan, classify, discover a risk before you push it into training environments of AI agents.
Yeah, and like you say, you know, I think Microsoft Copilot coming out fairly early,
Yeah.
maybe too early in all this. I've advised hundreds of companies using Copilot and some of these other tools, and universally they're finding that AI is a magnifying glass for data hygiene and governance issues. Literally on some of these advisory calls, I have people typing in show me passwords
Yeah.
into Copilot, and sure enough, there's a JDBC, ODBC
Exactly.
file with database username, password, connect string just sitting on SharePoint somewhere.
Exactly. We see it
Right.
so often.
So it's so you really have to find that stuff before you do any training, before fine tuning, before you know, building this rag and exposing it to people. Right.
No way to shortcut. Doing it responsibly requires you to understand data. And it's one of these kind of disruptive areas where Copilot and general AI and generative AI really introduce amazing capabilities for the business. And you can't just push it in without putting guardrails and understanding data. So data is really kind of, most security tools historically were data agnostic. Were around perimeter, around endpoints, were around firewalls, were around whatever, but infrastructure. But nowadays, kind of doing security in our age with the amounts of data with AI, you can't really ignore. Kind of security teams will have to put their hands into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking, you know, when ChatGPT came out, DSPM, we were already having some interviews on the podcast and exploring it. I remember when that came out, you know, it became immediately apparent, like, you guys are going to blow up, you know, because now more than ever, we need to know what's in that data that AI is going to be able to access, and explains the, yeah, and congrats on the 50 million Series B. That's a healthy sized Series B that I think underscores how important this is to the entire market at this point.
Yeah. In general, we're over 100 million in funding, and there's strong conviction in the space, and specifically in Sentra. And we really kind of, when we went out, because it was a new category, we decided to, you can't build a plane while you're in the air.
Right.
You build a plane on the ground. So we engineered the product in the way that we don't extract data. We dealt with all the issues of operational cost, forward platform support, working design partners. And soon after 24 months, we went into the market, introduced it. And we feel we have very robust foundation, very deep understanding of the problem because of our background, and amazing talent. So in this sense, yeah, we're privileged to be in the space. It's a very exciting space to be in, because for technology guys, it's a collision between cloud computation, data science, AI, and cybersecurity, and it's an exciting place to be in.
Well, time to value is important for a product, and I can't imagine many other products where during the POC, people are going to be like, "Oh wow,
Yeah. What I have here. Yeah.
every single that's not supposed to be there every single time." So it's always exciting to build that kind of a product where you have that light bulb moment very very early on with customers.
That's
Yeah,
spot on. Yeah,
yeah,
you because also the kind of the installation of the product is super quick.
yeah,
It's ageless. So within a few days, you suddenly have a completely different dimension about your environment, and
yeah,
suddenly kind of there is a aha moment. Ah, yeah,
yeah,
I I have credentials and encryption keys in this data store.
yeah, yeah. All right. Thank you, Asaf, so much for having this conversation with me today. One of my favorite topics to talk about. And congratulations again, being nominated as a Best Data Security Solution finalist. And
Thank you, Adrian. I appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Thanks for the opportunity and exciting space to be in. Much success and best of luck to all of us.